Welcome in, future educators. Let's jump right in today. I want you to imagine a student sitting in the back row of your class. Someone who maybe hasn't spoken up all week. Suddenly, they just light up. Why? Because the artwork you just put on the board looks exactly like a textile they've seen at their grandmother's house. That specific moment, that's exactly what we're aiming for today in this explainer. We're stepping into the role of instructional coach to really unpack Competency 001I. By the end of our time together, you're going to be able to confidently bring art to life for your students, and honestly, you're going to absolutely crush this portion of your certification exam. So let's dive into this by first asking ourselves a super practical question. Why should you, a future teacher, actually care about art history? When you step into your classroom, you're going to have a million things vying for your attention. You've got math scores, literacy interventions, classroom management, the whole shebang. Because of all that, it can be really easy to just push art to the sidelines. But here's the thing, art isn't just some extra rainy day activity. It's literally a profound way that human beings communicate their culture, their history, and their identity. You need to care because your students are depending on you to show them this full, beautiful spectrum of human expression. I really want you to picture your future classroom right now. Imagine a room full of young learners, all bringing their own unique backgrounds, languages, and family histories right to their desks. Now imagine the engagement, the absolute spark in their eyes when your students recognize that incredibly valuable artistic contributions have been made by people from their own diverse backgrounds. When you do this, you aren't just teaching art, right? You're validating their heritage. You're showing them that people who look like them and come from places like their families do have created masterpieces that the entire world studies. That is just powerful teaching. Moving right along, let's hit Section 1, Decoding Competency 001I, the Academic Blueprint. Okay, here is the exact text of Descriptor I, which you will absolutely need to know inside and out for your TXES 905 certification exam. It states that an effective teacher selects and uses instructional strategies, materials, and activities to promote students' awareness and appreciation of the characteristics of a variety of art forms of multiple heritages within and outside the Western tradition. Take a second to really zero in on those words, multiple heritages and within and outside the Western tradition. The state is being highly, highly specific here about inclusivity. Now, what's really interesting here is how we translate that formal, kind of dense exam language into everyday, actionable teaching goals for your actual classroom. Basically, as a beginning teacher, this means your job is to intentionally expose your students to a wide range of traditions from all around the world. You're going to guide them to study art from many different cultures, historical periods, and artistic movements. The core goal here, your instructional North Star, if you will, is helping students recognize that artistic achievement exists across all cultures. You have to ensure you're actively including those multicultural perspectives. Okay, moving to Section 2, the language of art and our key terminology. So, the crucial point for the exam is understanding the explicit difference between Western traditions and non-Western traditions, mostly because the test heavily emphasizes balancing the two. The Western tradition refers to artistic traditions that developed primarily in Europe and North America. So think of the Mona Lisa or ancient Greek sculpture. On the flip side, the non-Western tradition encompasses the incredibly rich artistic traditions that developed outside of Europe and North America. Think of Ming Dynasty ceramics in China, or traditional Navajo weaving, or West African bronze casting. Your classroom has to be a bridge between both of these worlds. Now, as you plan your lessons, you're going to need to utilize various art forms. This is a pretty straightforward term, but it's an important one. It simply refers to, well, exactly what it sounds like, the specific categories or types of artistic expression. We're talking about painting, sculpture, ceramics, textiles, or even modern digital art. When the exam asks you to expose students to a variety of art forms, it means don't just show them oil paintings all year long. Mix it up. Let them see sculptures. Let them touch woven textiles. Let them analyze digital graphic design. You're also going to guide your students through art movements. An art movement is basically a group of artists who share similar styles, ideas, or goals during a really specific historical period. Think of Impressionism, Cubism, or the Harlem Renaissance. Teaching art movements is actually a fantastic way to connect your art instruction directly to your social studies lessons. It really helps students see how groups of artists responded to the historical events that were happening right around them. Ultimately, all of this varied exposure leads us to aesthetic appreciation. This is the final destination we're driving toward. Aesthetic appreciation means your students are recognizing and valuing the beauty, the deeper meaning, and the specific qualities of an artwork. It means they aren't just glancing at a picture in a textbook and immediately turning the page, right? They're pausing, they're analyzing, they are truly valuing the skill and the story behind what they're looking at. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the core of multicultural education. By fostering that aesthetic appreciation for art from all over the globe, you are providing instruction that authentically includes perspectives from diverse cultures and backgrounds. You aren't just teaching a one-off art lesson. You are actively building a culturally responsive classroom where global awareness is woven into the very fabric of everything you teach. Right, so let's shift gears to Section 3, Theory into Practice, specifically looking at a 5th grade classroom. Look at how this veteran 5th grade teacher beautifully structures a comparative art unit. Notice the sheer intentionality here. They don't just show random pictures on a Tuesday. They intentionally flow from European Renaissance paintings, which is our Western example, straight into Mexican folk art, then over to Aboriginal Australian art, two very distinct non-Western examples. And finally, they bring it right up to the present day with contemporary digital art, introducing a modern art form. This is exactly the kind of balanced, strategic planning the Texas 905 exam is looking for you to do. But what are the kids actually doing during this unit? That's the big question. Well, they aren't just sitting passively while the teacher talks at them. In a highly effective classroom, students are actively engaged. They are explicitly tasked with identifying similarities and differences among these distinct traditions. They're grouped together to discuss the deep cultural influences reflected in each piece. For example, they might look at how a Renaissance painter used light and shadow, and then compare that to the vibrant dot painting techniques used in Aboriginal art to tell ancestral stories. Let's pause here for Section 4. Your instructional choices, our reflection zone. Think about this. When you put a European Renaissance painting right next to a piece of really bright Mexican folk art, what surprising connections do you think your students will discover? Just imagine the rich, dynamic conversations that could happen in your classroom. They might notice that both pieces, despite being from totally different continents and completely different centuries, use art to tell a compelling story about community, or religion, or just daily life. By asking them to find these connections, you're teaching them vital critical thinking skills, not just art history. Ask yourself, how does intentionally balancing Western and non-Western art make every single learner in your room feel seen and valued? Think about it. When a student who recently immigrated, or a student from a minority background, sees the art of their ancestors treated with the exact same academic respect and curiosity as a famous European masterpiece, it completely changes their relationship with school. It tells them, plain and simple, you belong here, and your history is important. And folks, that is the very heart of multicultural education. And finally, bringing it all together in Section 5, your future classroom, key takeaways for the exam. To succeed on the Texas 905, and honestly, more importantly, to succeed as a teacher, you've got to remember these core principles. Your students must study diverse artistic traditions. Your instruction absolutely has to include a balance of both Western and non-Western perspectives. Remember that true aesthetic appreciation doesn't just happen by accident, right? It develops specifically through your planned exposure to a huge variety of art forms. You are the one who has to intentionally include these diverse cultural examples in your lessons. So as you prepare to pass this exam and finally step into your very own classroom, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. When you look out at those desks on the very first day of school, what artistic traditions will you choose to introduce to your future students first? Are you going to play it safe, or will you open up the entire world for them? The choice is entirely yours, and I know you're going to make a brilliant one. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and best of luck on your journey to becoming an incredible educator. You've got this.